Alright, shed update time. We've got a bunch cooking. Right now, I'm working on the Fender. Definitely not a crackhead style setup. Definitely not a battery holding the chair to keep the chair from falling over as a Fender stand. But yesterday, I got cut a little bit short because the fellas decided to show up, and when the fellas show up, it's usually just a multi-hour bullshit session. So that happened around noon. So I got stuff done from about 4 to noon, which I guess I'm relatively pleased with, but whatever. Today I want to try and stay a little bit more focused. But I had another stripper party. Hood and grill panel stripped. So I even got all the little crevices. I mean, it's obviously all still got to be wire wheeled pretty thoroughly, but I got the bulk of the paint and the whatever clear coat stuff the other guy had put on. In doing so, I noticed that this is still a little bit bent here. That's fine. That's still a little wonky. I kind of figured, because when I was straightening this out, it was behaving strangely. It's still not really perfect, but whatever, because that's under the bumper, and this is a survivor driver type automobile. This is not a showpiece. I don't really like the 4 headlight grill panel anyway. If I can source a single one, I will put that one on instead. So, whatever. I'm very pleased with that so far. Fender. So, this is the one problem area on this Fender that I've found thus far. I don't really anticipate any other big surprises. It's a little bit expanded. It's too dark. It's a little bit expanded on one of the seams in here. I might make some kind of a, it's a very easy little, like 3/4 square strip. So I might do something with that. But for the time being, I am focusing on this. Crusty. It would appear that it only goes up to about here. So, yeah. It's a fairly funky piece. There's a fair amount of shape going on here, and the way it is curved, it's each end from here to here would honestly kind of need to be shrunk, and I don't really have shrinking capabilities in the conventional and not crackhead sense, because if you look at the shape, it's crowned and it's crowned, so it's almost kind of like a 30s car Fender, like this. Sorta. So the stretching, instead of being at one end or the other, it's got to be in the middle. So what I have done is crafted a rudimentary template, making slices like that, kind of at an angle because the curve, let's see here, there we go. So because the curve kind of runs this way at a bit of an angle, I've cut the slices on a bias, sort of, and when we set that there, you can see it's got to be stretched there, and I've kind of numbered these with, you know, relatively how much stretch needs to happen on each one, more or less, just as kind of a guide as I go. So, and then underneath, this needs to be shrunk a lot to kind of make this sort of return under here. So I've kind of laid out how much they need to shrink with pencil marks and such, like that sort of. And yesterday, I didn't really accomplish anything per se. I crafted kind of a proof of concept sort of piece before digging into the actual one. I made this out of some of my thinner stock of steel, just so it's a little bit easier to form and I can kind of get a feel for things. So I crafted this little fella. Fits relatively well, and I made it about this big and did all my stretching here, because when you stretch here, this isn't going to shrink, but this is going to gain shape, and it's going to kind of, this is still going to want to be shrunk some. It's going to kind of pooch out, but you're going to get all the shape you need in here when you've got a little bit of, you know, metal strength left here, if that makes any kind of sense. So I made it about this big, and then I sawed off all the extra, and that seems to fit relatively well for Just kind of a quick sort of proof of concept. So then I got out my, definitely not robbed off of the top of an oil drum, definitely not, but I got out some thicker steel and crafted this. So these are just kind of pizza cuts, because like I said, this is going to want to stick up, because I mean, you stretched in here and this is shrunk in relation to this, but this is still not shrunk enough. So made some slices to kind of relieve the tension. Those are all going to get sawed off anyway, but this is just so I can kind of see what I'm doing. And there we go. And that fits. It fits wonky because this is about the same size as the Fender, and therefore it doesn't really want to fit over the Fender perfectly. But I think this actually does fit pretty well, and I think once I get it cut out of the old Fender cut out of the way, this is going to kind of sit where it's supposed to. Still have to relieve this and fold that down to make that corner there, but it seems to be coming along. And just quickly tossing it on here seems about right. So I think we're just gonna roll with this, but pretty pleased with how that worked out. It was kind of fun, and just kind of very neatly making pizza slices to shrink that. That came out nice. So I'm gonna, once it's all fitted, I'm gonna weld those up, and then I gotta make a little supporting plate to go kind of behind this return here, in here, and that should be good. So that's what I'm working on today.